All right, what's going on, Macro Perspective peeps? It's Coach Seamus here. Super excited for another episode. This one's a big one for me personally. I've been looking forward to this one for a while. Marcos, unfortunately, is unable to join us today due to a little family emergency, but I think we will
Oh
still
no,
have
of
a great
course.
one
Right
here.
when we hit
And
record, I
hey, you know
lose you.
what? Two guests, two hosts, and a guest. Maybe for next time we'll do a follow up. But today I've got a great guest, and I'm super excited to introduce Andrew Zaragoza. I hope we got that right. Making sure it's good. Um, Co-host on the Mark Bell Power Project. He's been doing that for some time, and today I just honestly wanted to have a casual conversation, mostly about him, his experience in the podcasting world, what it means to be a podcast, but also like what it means to be a consumer of the information that we're getting out there from key figures from podcasts, because podcasts play a big role in our consumption, especially for mine. I know that. But Andrew, would you mind just kind of doing a little intro for yourself so the audience knows who you are, how you got in the game, who you are, what you're excited about today?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, first off, thank you so much for inviting me onto the show. It was a cool, fun little experience. And sorry if I'm choppy right now. Hopefully, the connection's solid for you.
Yeah, it's good.
But I saw. I think it might have been your comment. You're like, "What's it going to take to get you on the show?" And I was like, "Bro, just ask. I would be freaking honored." So thank you so much. And
Appreciate that.
Yeah, no, and so just a super quick background on me. I've been co-hosting and producing Mark Bell's Power Project podcast for the last 6 years. We started with a whole new feed. He had a podcast previously, but we got rid of that completely. Started brand new, 0 subscribers on YouTube, 0 subscribers on iTunes and podcast, all that stuff. Started all over, and I had no idea what I was doing. I just dove face first into basically concrete and figured out my way, how to put a podcast together. And so before that, I was just a photographer. And Mark and I would joke all the time about how like I would be doing some like filming something, or I'd be filming a commercial, photographing a commercial, doing ads for Facebook or whatever, like images and like graphics and stuff. And he would just look at me and be like, "And you thought you were just going to be a photographer?" And here I was wearing tons of different hats. And then as the podcast made a change, I noticed like, hey, like Mark's going to need somebody to help run this whole ship. I
Yeah.
think I should be that guy because, even before all of this, when I was just working the 8 to 5, just like anybody else, I would just listen to podcasts all day long. And I
Mm-hmm.
used to just kind of, like I would put the headphones on and just like do my like really like monotonous work all day long and just zone out listening to stuff, imagining like, oh my God, that would be so cool to like have my own podcast. And like that would just having conversations. Like I would get to the point where, listening to Joe Rogan or whoever, and like they'd ask a question and I would just like hit pause and I'd start acting like I was on the podcast. That's how big of a nerd I am. And then once video podcasts became popular, that's when I started watching them like on screen and stuff. And
Yeah.
at work, you're not supposed to be watching YouTube, but
Yeah.
there I was like hiding, and one thing that actually happened on the Joe Rogan podcast was he was talking to somebody, and I don't remember how it came up, but they were like, yeah, there's somebody that's stuck in a cubicle right now listening to us, wishing that they were doing anything but what they're doing right in that moment. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I know a lot of people probably felt like, oh, he's talking to me, but I don't care. Like I'm getting the chills thinking about it because in that
Yeah.
moment, that's when I decided I'm like, yeah, I wasn't put on this planet to be, filling out these documents and sending them to somebody else and just receiving more and more and more every single day. The work would never go away. It was
Yeah.
just more work would just constantly come back in. And then I had just kind of realized too, like if I disappeared, nobody would notice, right? The,
Mm.
the, the work that I was doing was not making an impact on this world. And
Yeah.
so then hearing Rogan say that, I was like, dude, that's it. I'm not going to do this anymore. So I wish I could say like, oh, right then in that moment, I quit my job. I walked down, I never looked back and I made it. That's definitely not the case. What I started to do was I went to YouTube University and I started learning how to be a better photographer. I
Wow.
did that, and I studied on Creative Live a lot. I don't know if anybody remembers that. Um, our boy Chase Jarvis created a platform where photographers, videographers would just go and do like online training live, and it was like the
Mm.
coolest thing ever. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting like way
Oh,
sidetracked.
please
Just to
keep
lay it
going.
out there.
This is
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. So again, I had I had my daughter at the time, had my girlfriend who was going to be my wife, but she's my wife
Yeah.
now. We had bills to pay. We had the car payment. We had the traditional paycheck to paycheck life. We both had great jobs. Well, we thought they were great because they had great
Yeah.
benefits, and we were doing what you're supposed to do, right? You
Yeah.
work 40 hours a week, you pay the bills, and you take your daughter to the park on the weekends, and that's life, right? Like, that's you look around the office, everybody's doing the same thing. But
Yeah.
then I would look around the office and be like, dude, nobody's happy here, and everyone's out of shape. I don't want to sound shallow or anything, but like at that time I wasn't in shape either. But I'm like, dude, man, the ones that make the most money look the worst, and they also are the most unhappy. And I'm like, dude,
Mm.
yeah, this just like again, I wasn't put here to do this. So
Yeah.
again, I started learning as much as I could on the side. So I started my little photography business. Every second that I wasn't like on the clock, because we eventually went remote. This is way before the thing that happened recently. I was
Yeah.
already working remotely, so the second I would clock out, I would just like go from this computer, and I turn around and I would go on my personal computer, and
Wow.
I would start learning about photography and stuff. And it was my wife that actually pushed me to start like booking like clients and stuff.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And so that started to kind of pick up steam. And I'm skipping over a ton of stuff just to keep things moving. But what happened was I was doing a bunch of video work where
Yeah.
nobody paid me anything. And then I started doing photos, and like my first gig, I got paid. And I was like, oh, shoot,
That's
this is
awesome.
cool. It wasn't much, but it was enough to cover gas. And then eventually it was like enough to cover that new lens that I wanted,
But that,
little
but
things like
that, but
that.
that payment, but that payment opened your eyes, right? It,
Oh, yeah.
it, it was that thing that was that. Let's just say it was like less than $100 or whatever it was, but it was the thing that it was that prime mover that changed your filter on the world, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because what happened was I'm like, dude, I'm breaking well, not really breaking my back, trying to film these videos that take me weeks. And it's like, I can go show up to this photo shoot and I get paid $100 for like less than an hour's worth of work. Like,
Yeah.
okay, like I think there's something here. And
Yeah.
then eventually you start booking like legit photo shoots. Like I would do like any gig. Like I would do someone's like birthday party. I would do kids' birthday parties, which was the worst. Like I didn't like being around that many like strange kids. It just wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
But what happens is those kids have parents that have other kids or whatever, and they need their graduation photos taken. They
Yeah.
get a little bit older now, they need their wedding photos done and all that stuff. And then it's like, oh, by the way, I have a best friend that's getting married next month also, or can you shoot her wedding also?
Yeah.
And so you start to kind of build this little network of clients, and it's like, dude, we are getting really close to starting to pay off some bills with just my photography stuff.
That is
This
so
is really
cool.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
again, so that whole like, oh, this is an amazing problem to have. Like, I, wow, which route is going to pay things better? The guaranteed 40 hours a week, where I'm going to get like a nickel raise in the next 3 years, or this other thing that's like a little up and down, but
Mhm.
like, hey, we don't know what's going to happen. So I just kept
Yeah.
doing stuff like that. I just kept networking. I kept trying to just say yes to as many gigs as possible. Um, and then, so one of them, we'll bookmark this one. I would do housewarming parties for my real estate cousin. He would sell a house, and then he would throw a big party for them. I would
Yeah.
come in, just take photos of the party, just to have them like remember the whole thing. So we'll remember that one in a second. My wife on a random Friday night she was just on Snapchat, just kind of scrolling. She saw Ashley Horner saying that she's going to be in West Sacramento the next morning. I
Yeah.
was like, what the heck is she doing in West? Like, this is weird. And then I'm like, wait, West Sac, dude, super training is in West Sac. And so like, where's it at? And she's like, oh, at a gym called Super Training. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, okay, dang, I've been wanting to go there. Like I knew about bigger, stronger, faster.
Yeah.
Guys at my local gym here in Elk Grove, California, which is just outside of Sacramento, they
Hmm.
would talk about like, oh, I know about Super Training Gym, but you can only go there if you're a big, strong, competing power lifter, and nobody in here is strong enough to go lift there. And I'm like, oh, damn,
Yeah.
someday that'd be cool. So, anyways, it was there and it was open to everybody. And again, this was at the time where I was like, I just need to get more revenue streams. I need to get more gigs. I need to get an opportunity to show people that
Yeah.
I can crush it.
Nice. Hustling.
So yeah, yeah, dude, just trying to do everything, like not sleeping at all. Like it was not good. I'm
We'll
kind
get
of
into
back
the
there right now.
health and longevity stuff in a moment because we all love that
Okay.
here. But like obviously in this season of life, and first off, I know we're gonna get deeper into this. First off, I just want to like I got chills hearing that because that is the true. I think that's a true American dream. That's a true story right there of someone doing something that they thought was the promised land, quote unquote. But when you actually get there and you did it, you're like, this is not fulfilling in any way. And you were looking for something. And you know what I love about you there, Andrew, and I just want to commend you as well as you went to work. You didn't go and say, hey, I'm just going to complain about this. You went right into the transition of doing the work that you needed to do. You got better skills. You got better at networking. You went to events. You put your butt on the line, right? And you put your bills on the line, you put your family's time on the line, like that. I honestly want to just say that's incredible. I get in chills because it's not easy to do that because it's so easy to already have the job, but if it wasn't the thing that was fulfilling you, I mean, what kind of life are you showcasing to your daughter, to your wife? Like, is this the man that I want to be? And I really just want to say, wow, honestly, super super impactful. Like, if you're listening to this in the audience, like, just if you just take that part from this, I mean, it just comes to show that your dreams are alive, but they're in the work that you need to do.
Yeah, yeah, and if you are listening and you might be thinking, well, you might be thinking a couple things, but like if one of those things you're thinking is like, oh, maybe I don't have that, or maybe he had a gift, he's a little extra special, or whatever it may be. We all make these excuses like, I'm not enough, I'm not that person, I can't do what he did because of X, Y, and Z. When I tell you that I am not talented, I am not special, I am, if anything, man, I am subpar on all levels. The only thing that I did that everyone else didn't is I never gave up. I worked my face off. And when I tell you I was up at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning when I had to clock into work at like 8, I did that. And I did that multiple times. Like again, too many times. I've lost years of my life because of the stuff that I would do to get to where I am. But
Yeah,
again, it's not because I was born with into a family that just happened to be technically sound, and like I didn't get the internet till I was in high school, right? And I graduated
yeah.
in '03, so like the internet was well around. So like I'm trying to take all the excuses out because I used to do that way too much. I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
do this or that because they got lucky, or I didn't get the right deck of cards the way they did. I I just I
You know who
worked
we're
my
speaking to? We're
yeah.
speaking to that person just like you that's in the cubicle right now with the little
Yeah.
phone on the side, headphones in, sneaking like really not necessarily I would say not looking for a way out, but just looking for truly what their soul was destined to do in this world or whatever their purpose is. So if you are listening on this, just take that for what it is, exactly that. Andrew literally no skills, no nothing, whatever, no chance of any chance of the success, subpar, all those words, right? Hard work, time, effort. Effort is sexy. It's not exclusive to a certain group. It's inclusive to everyone. You know, it's not just Andrew. It's not just me, Seamus. It's not just Marcos. It's everybody can put out more effort, and then they can focus that effort, and that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, yeah. And so something that like I used to always look at my dad for like, oh, that's somebody that's a hard worker, right? Like we would we would see him go to work every single day. He's like, he never missed a day of work. And I'm like, dude, that's amazing. And so when I got into the workforce, I'm like, I'm going to be like my dad. I'm never going to miss a day of work. And I had so many bad jobs that I hated with like terrible bosses. I was
Yeah.
like, dude, man, am I a piece of crap because I
Mm,
can't do what he does? Like this is crazy to me. Like I can't figure it out. Like I dread every single Monday, and this guy doesn't take a day off. Like on the so my dad was he well he still is actually. He just works on cars, right? You
mm.
know he works on cars Monday through Friday, and then Saturday Sunday he would work on his own cars. So he literally never took a day off. And when I would see that, I'm like, dude, like gosh, am I lazy? Like what is wrong with me? How come I can't figure it out? And then eventually I learned, well, he loves to work on cars. Like, oh, all right. Once I discovered, oh, I love to create content. I love to take photos. I love to make videos. I love to podcast. Oh, that's why I don't take time off anymore. Like, I
Yeah,
got
there
it.
it is.
And I again, I always equated it to looking at my dad and like, oh, I have a little bit of that in me somewhere. But it was actually like him and my mom. So like I told this
Mm,
story on a Saturday school about how my mom, when she was a teenager, she would go from Mexico to Northern California to just work all summer, and then she would save all that money, and then her, my grandmother, and my uncle would live off of that the entire winter. So that's what a teenage girl did every
wow.
single summer, and I'm like, all right, you know what? I was born with a really really good set of circumstances where both of my parents were hard workers, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
what I ended up calling that, and I know this term, especially in America right now with like what's going on with the border and stuff, but
Yeah.
I called it a migrant mentality, and that mentality simply is I just need an opportunity, and I will show you how hard I can work.
There
So
it is.
I have kind of developed that migrant mentality where I'm going to be the hardest worker in the room, no matter who's in it. Now, there's going to be people in the room that are better, faster, stronger, all of the things way better than me, but
Yeah.
I'm going to work as hard or harder than anybody. And if I fall short, it's not because I didn't put my all into it. I'm going to fall short because like I'm just not there yet.
Yeah.
Emphasis on yet, right?
Love
All of
that.
us, just yet. Just give me
Just
a little
yeah.
bit of time, and I
It's
promise
not a
I'll get
hard
there.
wall. It's a dot dot dot. Like it just give it more time and all that. And I love that migrant mentality thing. I love that. I mean, I you won't see it from me, but obviously I live in Los Angeles. I'm in LA, so SoCal. Um, I'm half Filipino. My fiance's Filipino. Both our parents are from Filipino culture. Migrant mentality, immigrant mentality runs deep, and I'll tell you right now that I really I really connect with you with this. Is like seeing your father, your mother work hard. My mom, four boys, single mom, 3 to 4 jobs at any given time to make it happen. I just go like this. That right there, I go, I don't know how you did it, mom. You're crazy, but I'm gonna take that. And I took that and like I just apply it day in, day out. And it's something else. I honestly think it's a superpower sometimes because it's some people just can't do the same things that you might be doing, Andrew, or the amount of work ethic that you might put out, or even just the opportunities you might see because you're just so tuned in. So that's pretty epic, man.
Yeah, and if you feel like you can't do all this today, that's fine. You're not supposed to, right? A huge important saying that we have, in Slingshot in the Power Project, and this comes from Mark Bell, and that is do more, be more. The more
Mm,
that you do, the more that you can become. The more that you do, the more that you can handle, right? So I couldn't do all this day one. It was like, oh, can I take a good photo today? Like, all right, cool. Then it was like, can I take more than one? Can I deliver that? Can I do that and photos? Can I do that, photos, videos, and a podcast all in one day? It's like, well, shoot, day one, no way. Day 1,000, yeah, actually, I can do that, and I do that on a regular basis now.
yeah.
So yeah, again, it was always about getting that opportunity and going back to that day at super training, that first day. I was just looking for an opportunity to potentially take photographs of power lifters because I didn't know anything about powerlifting, but I was like, I know bodybuilders need photos taken when they're getting ready for a show or after a show. maybe powerlifters at a meet. Again, I had no idea, and I didn't know
Yeah.
powerlifters were just like at that time, especially just really big fat dudes trying to lift as much weight as possible. So I found an opportunity where I got to talk to Mark by himself, which was crazy because there's fans everywhere, and the gym was packed, and he was just by himself, and I'm like, ooh, here we go. And so I asked him, do power lifters ever need photos taken? And he was like, no. So I was like, oh, shoot, at least I tried. But then he responds with, power
Yeah.
lifters don't need photos taken, but I need a photographer. Because at the time, he didn't have anybody. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense that you are a gigantic company and you have no photographer. That's wild. So I stayed in contact with him. I came back a couple weeks later, and then he invited me back to do some photos. And so I worked for like a month and a half for free.
Yeah.
Didn't even question it because in my head I was like, this is going to amount to something cool. I didn't think it would amount to me leaving, being the last straw for me to leave my job, because he offered me a full time position.
Wow.
And this was like the leap, right? Because the opportunity he gave me had no guarantee, and it paid me way less than what I was getting paid at the secure, boring 40-hour a week job.
Ooh.
I have my, again, still my girlfriend at the time. We have our highest rent ever, that, as a couple at that time, had my daughter. There's a lot of stuff on the line, right? Like, okay, if this doesn't work out, I can go get another job or whatever. What if it does work out, but I just don't make enough money? And so all these things are going back and forth in my head. And my wife was like, well, girlfriend at the time was like, you need to take this. This is what you've always wanted.
Wow.
You need to, you need to go for this. And so with her blessing, it was like, all right, Mark, let's do this. And, right away, he ended up paying me way more. So that was really cool. But he was just like, hey, just come in, make yourself valuable, show that, you're worth it, and we will reward you for it. Because again, in my head, I'm like, oh, Slingshot and Super Training, Mark Bell, this is this like gigantic company, like they're worldwide. They've probably got like 100 people in there. And when I got there, it's a small company. It is worldwide known, like it is a big company.
Yeah.
But as far as staff and people, I'm 1 degree of separation from the person running the entire show, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was
It's crazy.
very easy.
Yeah, it's crazy to have like a company that's so world renowned. You understand like, hey, this little thing, the slingshot that he created, the hip circle, all those things, and you're like, that's in every gym that I've seen that I go to, even commercial gyms.
Yeah.
And but then just to see how like, oh, it's a trim and lean company, like that's actually so cool.
Yeah, and so what he was explaining was like, I'm sure where you're coming from, like if you need to get a raise or move a position or whatever, it's got to go to this person, then it's got to go to corporate, and it's got to do all this, and then it's got to make its way back. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, here it's like, all right, yeah, here you go. It's just like one conversation, and everything gets done.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it was fantastic. I remember, the first trip I took with the team was to the Arnold, and we spent like a week in Ohio, and man, I got cooked. Like, it was my first trip, and we did it for an entire week. I got so sick, and I was just tired the whole time. But that was like the true, like, hey, we're gonna throw you into the fire. If you
Yeah.
come out of it, then all right, cool. We're gonna give you a bump in pay. And that was actually like a cool little thing at the end of that on the flight home. I got a text from Mark, and he's like, hey, we're bumping you up. And I'm like, all right, cool, sounds good. And
Amazing.
so he's just always been a good dude. He's always been a really good person to me.
Yeah.
Him and his wife, they're just really nice people, really smart, business savvy people. And it's amazing that moving forward now, we're actually business partners. So like, I'm no longer an employee. We actually
Mhm.
own the podcast together, me, him, and Ensema.
Yeah.
And it's just so cool knowing like how he carried himself as a business person, and now like that's my business partner. I feel so secure in pretty much everything we do. And I'm just super grateful that it all started because I was just searching for that one opportunity.
Yeah.
And when I got it, I didn't let go of it. There were
Wow.
times where, people within the company were like, oh, dude, like, okay, it's cool that you're covering for the podcast for a little bit. We need to get an actual producer in here so that way you can go back to photos. And I'm like, no, like, I want to do this. I don't care what it takes. Like, I will I will bust my balls and I will like or bust my
Yeah.
butt and I will make sure that nothing falters, right? That my photos are never delivered late, they're never delivered with poor quality. Same with my videos and same with the podcast. And I maintained everything and I have no idea how I did. I kind of have an idea how I did it. I let go of all social life and at the time I only had one, one daughter and so it was and she was already kind of like old enough to take care of herself, so
Yeah.
I didn't have to be around the way I am with my son. But again, I just needed that one opportunity, and then things kept just piling on, and I just said yes to everything, and yeah, here we are. So it's been a fun long ride, but
Yeah.
man,
Well,
I wouldn't trade for anything.
that's first off, man. Wow, amazing story, amazing ride of a lifetime. Again, I commend you, dude. I like I said, I've to the audience. I was just telling Andrew, like, I hear your voice pretty much on a day to day basis. Marcos and I do, and we talk about the things and what we love about, obviously the name is Mark Bell's Power Project, but it's the Power Project. That's Nasima, Andrew, and Mark Bell. But I hear you, and what I've heard from you, the way you've developed, the way you think. Honestly, it doesn't come unnoticed. It's very much amazing because what you guys put out, in my opinion, is the consumer information that people are actually hungry for, that they're striving for, right? In this day and age, I really feel that with podcasts, with TikTok, with Instagram, like all these social media platforms, there's a lot of, really polarizing things. But I feel like what you guys do is a good job of seeing both sides or just seeing the lay of the land and then going, look, what are the filters that we need to look this through in a practical way? Not in a way that's super high functioning, but in a way that our consumers go like, okay, can we apply this? Is this realistic for us? And that's what I love about you guys. You take your time, you're intentional, and it's not just, okay, let's just get the most hard hitting person in here because they're the most hard hitting person and just have clips for the gram. I mean, you could do that obviously, but honestly, like that's I just really want to say I really commend you for that because honestly, the information is world renowned, my man. So I want to say thank you for that.
Man, I really appreciate that. Like, I've said this before in the past. Sometimes, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to sound, I don't know, like airheaded or something, but because I can see the download numbers, I can see the views, I can see everything, and obviously I can see people are listening and watching. But sometimes it feels like, dude, is this microphone on? Does anybody even care? Like, does anybody listen? Because just like in the room I'm in right now, like I don't have any windows in here or anything, like I
Yeah,
can't see the outside world, and I can't really get a pulse on things. But then we go live or I hear you speaking and I'm just like, yes, this is what I was here for. It
yeah,
wasn't to freaking put documents in a folder and then send it to someone else to do. It was what I call, is to create impact on this world. When I
yeah,
talked to Mark the first time, I was like, like because we did talk about money and stuff, and I'm
no,
yes, like it's important. Like, but I want you to know I'm not driven by money. I was like, my goal is to leave my very own footprint on this planet. And
mm,
if that is going to be accomplished by taking photos of you and the company and the lifters that come in here, if those can actually impact people's lives, it will be because of my photo. Now, it's not of me, but it's a photo
yeah,
I created. And so
yeah,
he dug that, and so like that's, I think, kind of what sprung off like a really cool like friendship and relationship. And then with the podcast, that footprint is now like 100 times bigger because
yeah,
like the DMs that I get, and just again, like in my head I'm like, okay, hopefully somebody downloads today's episode, that'll be really fun. But then I will get the DMs, people talking about like very very specific stories about my life, and I'm like, whoa, like you actually listened. That,
yeah,
again, like I get super emotional about it because I'm like, dude, I'm supposed to be nobody, right? Like,
yeah.
no joke. One of my high school teachers pointed at me and used me as an example of somebody that's going nowhere in life. That
Wow,
is a
wow,
true story.
that's first off, complete utter BS. Because you are somebody, you impact my life, and you impact others' lives, and for an educator to say that is completely asinine in my opinion, and I love that you're the antithesis of that. You showed and you proved that you are somebody, but not only that you are somebody, but you're somebody that makes impact, that you empower others. That's what I feel from you. You're not just doing it like I can honestly tell from your energy, from who you are, and just honestly being there over the last, like, I've been more of an avid listener since like 2020, like more so, but um like, I know where you're coming from. I know what your intent is, and it's like in no shape or form is it trying to gaming the system at all. So
Yeah, no, dude, I used to, like everybody else, I would just sit there like in the car driving, throw something on, whether it be a podcast or like, music or whatever.
yeah,
And like, it wouldn't actually, like, I wouldn't actually hear anything. I just put on noise and I would just sit there daydreaming, like, is this what my life was supposed to be? Like, am I just supposed to go clock in, do the thing, take a
yeah,
break, clock back in and out, all that stuff, and then clock out
mhm,
and just go to bed and wake up tomorrow and do it all again? Like, there's no way. Like, I always felt like, no, there's definitely more to it. It was sort of like there's like a curtain behind me, and I'm like, dude, once I take a couple steps back, like I'll be able to get behind the curtain and then be like, okay, I can see this like fake world, and then I can go actually do my thing. But like,
yeah,
no matter how far back like I stepped, like the curtain would just move back with me. And
yeah,
I just like, dude, I gotta figure this out. And then of course, like once I got encouragement from my wife and everything, I was like, oh, like this is what I was supposed to be doing. Because I would do
yeah,
that. I would like play all these stories in my head as I'm daydreaming in the car. Like, there's got to be something else. And then so, again, getting that extra encouragement from my wife, and
yeah,
just having that, like, that goal, right? That goal of
yeah,
like, I want to be a full-time photographer. I'm going
yeah,
to do whatever it takes. I'm going to study on YouTube. I'm going to watch Creative Live. I'm going
yeah,
to take my wife or take my daughter, take whoever is a human body, so I can go practice on them every single day, taking
yeah,
pictures, learn Flash, learn all these things, build a website, all this stuff, because I want that more than anything.
yeah.
And through like a weird, like, kind of turn of events, a different path than I was expecting, I actually got there. And it was all just because I took a shot,
Yeah.
and I made sure that I never let go of that opportunity.
Name of the game, man. Name of the. I love that, and I think we could definitely keep pushing that agenda and like that mindset to the folks in there. But I want to turn it around a little bit here, turn it towards this a little bit. Obviously, you're now partnered there with the Power Project. Give us the lay of the land with the Power Project. Like, what have been some exciting episodes that you've done recently, or guests that you guys have had on recently? You guys have a bunch of episodes coming out all the time. I'm always listening. But for you personally, what have you? Who are some people that were on that not only impacted your life, from a professional standpoint, but I know you're well into your health and fitness. Obviously, that's the Power Project's pushing that all the time. But there's also some business, some other people in there. Maybe it's a little more spiritual. What were some key areas that you found to be so beneficial to you? And the certain guests maybe.
Yeah, it's we are so privileged to get to do what we do, because again, like a podcast is essentially a one-way street. Like, me and you were talking, if the person that's listening is like curious about, like, oh, but how did you quit your job exactly, like what was that like, was your boss upset or whatever, like they can't interject right now. And so like that's why, like, I love it when people actually start recording their own podcast, because then they can start asking those questions, so it becomes a two-way street. And so
Yeah,
with that, when we interview somebody, it's a two-way street.
yeah,
And the first person that comes to mind is Doug Brignoli. He unfortunately he died, I want to say like 2 years ago now, or maybe a
yeah.
year ago.
Hmm.
Um, Very famously known for saying, do the research when you take the thingy that's going to prevent the other thing. When you take it, you're going to be totally fine. And if I die, you will know that that the thing wasn't the
Yeah.
right answer. And unfortunately, he essentially died suddenly. You can connect the dots there.
Hmm.
And again, he was just a very stubborn boomer. Like, he was very set in his own ways. And when you went against that, or you had a ulterior motive, whatever you want to call it, he
Yeah.
just yelled at you and told you were stupid. but but
Fun fact, that episode with him is
yeah,
literally the episode that, like, my background's in exercise science, understand biomechanics, all this stuff. That was the episode that flipped my paradigm a bit. I was like, what is this guy talking about? Had to buy his book. Literally, as soon as your episode ended, went to the website, bought the book, read the book, and I was like, and then I did the program just to like try it out, and I was like, oh my gosh. But I had to try it out for myself first without actually passing judgment first, and it was great.
that's great, dude. That's amazing. That's what everybody should do. But instead, everybody has their opinion, and then they're just like, yes, no, yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter. But then they don't actually try it. So it's like,
Yeah,
what's going on here? So with that, it was interesting because that was when my back was in really bad shape. Like I
yeah.
had a hard time putting socks on in the morning. My wife had to help me with
Wow.
that stuff.
Oof.
And so, but I love fitness, man. I love getting in shape. And I worked at a gym essentially, right? So like I couldn't pass a dumbbell without getting to my desk, right? So like
Yeah.
I'm going to work out despite the pain or not. And so at that time, I would literally just go into the gym and chase the pump. That's all I would do. And I'm like, man, like I know I want to lift heavy, like because I want to get big, and all this and that. Like you're supposed to get under a barbell and squat, and you're supposed to deadlift, you're supposed to bench press, you're supposed to do all this stuff. We had him on the first time, and same thing, dude. As we're talking to him, I buy his book. So it just hit me at a really good time because I was talking to Mark and I'm like, yeah, I'm chasing the pump. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm making some decent progress, but eventually I got to go heavy. And he's like, well, who said you have to go heavy? And I'm like, well, you kind
Mm.
of like you talk about like if you want to build muscle, you got to, lift heavy and this and that. And he's just like, well, we've never seen anybody that really hasn't ever like messed with like heavy deadlifts and heavy squats and get big, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So I'm like, oh
Yeah.
shoot, like okay. And then I want to say it was that week we had Doug Brignoli on the first time. And here is this jacked old dude talking about how he's winning shows and he looks phenomenal. And then he goes, and I don't touch a barbell. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second, what? Like,
Yeah. That's
how,
whoo,
how do
only
you get
these
that?
moves.
How do you get that jacked using just a cable machine? Like, I need to know more.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I dove in. I learned as much as I could. Also, like I did the whole online program thing, and that's the only way I train right now. Like I'll do other
Wow.
stuff in the gym. Like I'll follow what Nsima does from time to time, especially with like the neck stuff because of jujitsu.
Yeah.
But as far as like getting in the best shape of my life in my late 30s came from doing the Brig 20. And
Yeah.
so as far as like impacting my life, like dude, that got me back to lifting on a regular basis. It it essentially it didn't get me out of pain, but it stopped me from creating more pain, right? Because I would
That's
be in a
awesome.
pretty good spot, and then I would, you know, I'm not going to lift heavy, not going to lift heavy. And then all of a sudden it's like, all right, let's put another plate on there. And I'd go for a deadlift and I'm like, oh, I'm going to feel that one later. And then it
Yeah.
would just like, oh, actually, I feel it a lot worse than I thought I was
You
going to
know,
feel it.
I felt so much for you. So I think I messaged you or commented on like your back post like years ago. I don't know, but you said something and I was like, I'm gonna message this guy or like hit him up on Instagram. But I've had a torn back. I wrestled from middle school all the way to college, and I do jujitsu now too. So there's that. But when you become, it's funny with fitness. It's like you become an expert in the things you're in pain of, right? So like the back is this thing that like kept inflaming and all this, and I know that you had it. So I was like, hey, have you tried like reverse hypers, or have you tried like glute walks or QL side bends, or have you tried this move or like Jefferson? I was like, I think I was just saying all those things, but it's funny how you find a system like the Doug Brignoli system, and then it's like, wow, people can give it all the flack that you want, but a system is only as powerful as the person following it, right? The system has no power until you utilize it. And I'm glad that you did find that for yourself because, man, I hate when I hear my clients, my patients, go like, I'm in pain. And then that is the excuse to not do anything. It's like, that should be the fire under your butt, in your case, over your butt, the lower back, to get you going. So I'm glad that you're finding that. And that's epic. Yeah, that episode was, controversial or, just very like polarizing in a way.
Yeah, no, it went against the grain, right? Because, when if you go back to the beginning of the Power Project, and if you go even further to the Power Cast, it was powerlifting everything, right? So
Yeah,
when a dude comes on and he's like, "Yeah, don't lift with a barbell if you want to build muscle." And so that's like, whoa, wait a second. Like, this goes against everything I believe. And he talked about that all the time, right? Like, so I'm glad that you know who he is and his background and stuff. And he would just talk about like the dogma. Like, you're not gonna see a cable sissy squat on the cover of muscle magazine, right? Because it doesn't look cool. It's
yeah,
not, it's not a big dude with plates on the bar and sweating and going nuts with, people screaming and stuff. It's not that. But man, is it freaking effective? Absolutely. I again, I've
100%, 100%.
dude, in my late 30s developed more muscle than like I ever have because of the Brick 20. And you can look at me now and be like, "Well, dude, you still look pretty small." It's like, "Well, you should have seen me a couple years ago when I was even
Yeah,
smaller." And
and
so,
in pain, in more pain.
yeah, in a lot of pain. Yeah, absolutely. So, but getting back to the original question, yeah, he was definitely like, I mean, it's hard for me to think of anybody else that was more impactful, like overall for me, than
Yeah,
Doug Brignoli, because
wow.
like after that episode, I started lifting the Brig 20 as much as I could. Given the gym that I was in, we didn't have the dual the free motion dual cable machine, so I could do what I did, whatever I could. And then I even joined another gym just to use their cable machine, and I would get so frustrated because I'd walk in and be like, oh dude, like there's another guy doing cable flies again. Like that's all people would do on it is cable flies and bicep curls. That's all anybody
Yeah,
does on the free motion cable machines. And I'm like,
that's
guys,
so funny.
I get a full body workout on that machine. And again, it was all because of Doug. And man, it hurt when he died, but
Yeah,
yeah,
unfortunately.
eh,
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
yeah,
Well, yeah, rest in peace to someone. Honestly, I love to say this. The people that I try to listen to are the people that break the mental models that most people have. He is definitely one of those because when he came on, and there were so many people coming on the fitness scene, I think in the last 6 years that you guys have had on some of the best names on there that very much are big names now or more, more in the vernacular and the lexicon of social media, but they're a little bit more polarizing in one way. But when you actually go deeper into their system, you realize like it's not the conventional stuff because the conventional stuff may not necessarily fit for certain people. I know it doesn't for me. I know for me, with my background in combat sports and being able to train people and being a performance health coach for the company I work for, Synergenics, and being a health and wellness practitioner, I have to find solutions for people that are not, hey, just put a barbell on your back and that's how you hit legs. You
mm,
know,
hmm,
I've trained an 89-year-old. I've trained a 7-year-old when I was, coaching wrestling. You have to be agnostic to an extent with certain things, and that comes down to either exercise, and then that comes to nutrition. I know that obviously nutrition is obviously a component of all the things that you guys talk about too, and it's like as a coach, I have to be that because I can't give it's not a key turn type of approach with people, right? It's very much individualized. I have to work with the person in front of me, like this conversation we're having right now, and I have to find out that thing that motivates you, and I have to find that in hundreds and hundreds of people that I serve, and it's it's a lot easier now that I've been doing this for like 10 plus years. But before it was very much, I was judgmental. It's like, no, the barbell is the only way, or machines are the only way. You're supposed to only eat paleo. You're only supposed to eat vegan. And
hmm,
it's like, now people are smarter. And I think a lot of that attunes to the fact that you've been on the scene, your voice is there. And yeah, man, I love the people that you guys get on. And I think it's so powerful that information and information technology, especially with the emergence of like AI and things like that, the consumers getting smarter, right?
hmm, yeah, yeah. And you know, it is unfortunate that this is the TikTok generation or whatever we want to call it, right? Social media
Yeah,
kind of makes the world turn at the moment. At least it seems that way. We
yeah,
had the muscle doc Jordan Shallow on the podcast recently. The episode hasn't come out yet, but we just started throwing some random names his way because we started having fun with it, because he's on social media but he doesn't pay any attention to it. So we would
Yeah.
throw like names at him and he would be like, I have no idea who that is. Like, really, you don't know who Paul Saladino is? He's like, never heard of him. I'm like, you might be my favorite guest of all time. And you're gonna love that episode, by the
I
way.
can't
Like,
wait. I can't wait. It'll be on the
knowing
queue.
your back, yeah, knowing your background now, dude, like, oh my gosh, like he got so deep into like really complex, like you're just get your notepad out, dude, because you're gonna love it.
I love it.
But
I mean, yeah, no, I mean, this podcast is about you, but just again, a little bit about me, and I know the
yeah,
audience
no,
does,
no, keep
but
going.
degree in exercise science, strength and conditioning coach, health and wellness coach, precision nutrition master health coach. Like those are like the qualifying certifications. Just to say, hey, I can have a foot in the door. But I think honestly, I think my true calling in this world is just serving people in their health and wellness in the longevity space, the health span space, and being able to individualize it. I think now I love that guest that you're having on, because guests come in now with Synergenics, and we have, we're concierge medicine, high level medicine. Think like America Health. I know you guys have them as sponsors, but like high level concierge worldwide, for a high performance type of person. And even then, even these high performers, these CEOs, these like high level executives, even they have to go through the lay of the land. And they're like, Seamus, I'm so tired of the BS with TikTok, social media. It says this, it says that. What do I do? And then that's where I not only coach the person, because obviously there's that coaching hat. And then obviously with the physician, it's that prescriptive hat of like, hey, the physician and the coach are working with you together. But I'm also trying to educate the person, right? Kind of like in this podcast, educate them to give them the filter to navigate the world. Because if someone like a Paul Saladino or like a Dave Asprey, I'm not going to dog on them. I'm always up for someone that is willing to start the conversation around health. But if those claims are so absolute without you, the individual, looking under the hood for your specific health, and you're just arguing certain things, then we're going in circles, right? I want to help you, but we also have to educate you, and then we have to give you the filter to navigate the world, because there's going to be something after TikTok. There's going to be another Saladino. There's going to be someone else, and it's just like, I can't always be there to hold your hand. I can't do the exercise for you. I can't eat for you. I can't sleep for you. I can't manage your stress for you. I can only just give you the tools at the end of the day.
Yeah, dude. And so like that's exactly what I was getting at. Like with this TikTok generation, like you have to say something to get the views, to get the attention.
Yeah.
But what okay, let's ask like two more questions after that. Can you get two answers deeper than that, or is this your only thing? And so like what I like to equate it to is like the reel or the TikTok that gets a lot of attention. That's the tabloid ad at the checkout line, right? Like that's
Yeah.
that one little cover that you're like, oh, that's interesting. But can any of us remember any of those magazines like as soon as we walk out the door? It's like,
No.
no, like, no, they're gone, right? And so what I equate a podcast to is a book written about whatever it was, that article that you looked at, right? So like if we, because like we've had on Liver King before, right? Like Mark went to
Mhm.
go meet him and had an interview with him. In my opinion, it was a cool conversation. He still lied right to his face too, though. But in that though, we were able to dig a little bit deeper, right? That it was a longer conversation. So like it was more than just like a, all right, cool, he's eating, raw testicles again. It was more
Yeah,
of
right.
like, oh, let's see like how you actually live your life and that sort of thing. So that's
Yeah.
why I think again, kind of bring it back to podcasting is like, man, if you can be good on a good on a podcast on a long form content sort of thing, then you're going to crush on the short form. But if
Yeah.
you're crushing on short form, that doesn't automatically mean you're going to be good on long form content, right?
Yeah.
Because once you get a couple of questions deep and you start like wondering or you start asking like, well, like what do you mean or whatever it is, like then it's like, oh, okay, like you're a little bit shallow on this side. All right,
No.
gotcha.
Exactly. Now that makes sense. I think this is a good time to kind of pivot into that, and just making sure we're gracious of each other's time here, and just making sure we're respectful of yours, obviously. Let's talk about. I know you're excited. You have a few things out. What, for the person listening here? Obviously, I have a podcast, so I'm going to be taking notes. I'm going to be rewatching this and all that. What does make a good podcast, or what are the good production values you've seen in the last 6 years? What are the notes that you've seen will help develop a podcast from, like you said, zero subscribers, zero views, zero downloads, to then go, here are the things you need to check off on a milestone, and this will get you in the right direction. If you want to just talk about that, I know you got a few things coming up.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for this opportunity. I really, again, I appreciate it. Um, yeah, obviously, zero everything. You make a ton of mistakes, but then one day you wake up and it's like, okay, we have over 80 million downloads and views, and we have 349,000 subscribers. All right, well, looks like we figured out a couple things along the way. But yeah, like the biggest things I think, like, and this is something I think you and I'm sorry, your co-host name,
Marcos, yeah.
Marcos, can start implementing right away, is just pulling on the three biggest levers that you can pull on for YouTube, and that is, of course, the thumbnail, because the thumbnail's for the viewer, the
Hmm.
titles for the computer, and then the trailer is the retainer. So what I'm getting at
Ooh,
is 80% of everybody that's watching on YouTube does not look at the title. The only thing that they do is they scroll. All right, thumbnail. All right, I like that thumbnail, and they click. I do this all the time because I drive and watch YouTube. Well, I listen to YouTube, but there's not a day where I'm not watching YouTube. But like,
yeah.
I'll be scrolling, right, like I'm driving, and I'm like, okay, and then I see a thumbnail. And I'm like, all right, cool. Let me watch that. I never look at the title itself because it's small, and it's like if the thumbnail doesn't grab me, I'm not going to bother.
Makes
So
sense.
thumbnail is your billboard, right? You got to make
Love
a
that.
really big, bright, clean, and clear message on your billboard to get somebody to click on your podcast. Now, again, I said podcast, and we're talking about YouTube, but in 2024 and beyond, podcasts are now video. Like, you need the video component to your podcast if you want to grow. And I'm not saying an audio only podcast won't grow. Rick Rubin is obviously doing that. His
Right,
podcast is amazing, and he has like 30-hour long episodes, and he's doing just fine. But
right.
for the everyday person like me, like, we need to have all these like boxes checked off, and that first one is that thumbnail. Okay, so now I said that the title is very important also. You also just said that 20% of all YouTube visitors actually look at the title, right? 80% of everybody just ignores it. Well, the title is telling YouTube, hey, I need you to put this in this folder over here. So
Mm,
if you have an episode where you're talking about diet, nutrition, specifically about the carnivore diet, or the pitfalls of the carnivore diet, when you title it correctly for that, then YouTube is like, oh, all right, I'm going to put this in this folder. And anybody that watches carnivore diet content, we're going to suggest that video next. And
mm.
the super duper important part of all of that is essentially, and now I'm a creator. I hate copying anybody else. But if you can get the coattails of another video that's doing really well, so like, let's say the 10 best carnivore diet hacks you've never heard of. Well,
Yeah.
if you just say the best carnivore hacks you've never heard of, well, there's a really good chance that if somebody watches that video, YouTube is like, oh, this person likes this video. Let's give them this one that's the exact same thing, or essentially the exact same thing.
That's funny.
So you ride the coattails, you play the game. It's the game, unfortunately. And as a creative, I hate it, but I play the game, and it's working out just fine. Now,
Yeah.
the third and most important part of all of this, because it brings the other two together, is essentially you're delivering on that promise, but you're delivering on that promise of the thumbnail, the title, and you're doing it within the first like 30 to 45 seconds.
Wow.
So
Wow.
for us at the Power Project, if you notice, we start off every episode with an episode trailer.
Yeah.
So like tomorrow's episode with Andy Triana, he talked a lot about how like you can make coffee more effective. So I can't think off the top of my head of what the episode's going to be titled. I already have it set. I'm trying to remember. It was something along the lines of like you're consuming caffeine incorrectly, something like that.
Something like that.
So
Yeah.
that, yeah, so the thumbnail is very similar to that. The title's that, and then within the first 45 seconds, it's Andy Triana explaining how if you drink a cup of coffee and then go for like a run, you'll make the coffee work a lot better. And so it's like,
Mm,
oh, okay. So like drinking coffee and then sitting down is bad because it's not really going to help you as much as drinking coffee and then actually going and doing something. So
yeah,
when you can combine all three of those and they work synergistically, man, that's how you catch on the algorithm. That's how you beat the algorithm, whatever you want to call it. But that's essentially like how you get more views and downloads. Because if you win the YouTube game, then you're definitely going to win the podcast game. Because on the podcast side, everybody has way more patience, right? They're locked into you almost no matter what.
yeah,
But if you play a really dope trailer or you have a really cool thumbnail and you get somebody's attention and they click on it and then they hear 30 seconds of like, oh my gosh, like I need more context. I want to hear what else is on this episode.
yeah.
Then they're locked in, right? Because I think on Spotify, you only need like, I think it's like 30 seconds and it counts as like a listen. So you can kind of
Oh,
game the system that way. Yeah. Yeah, but all of this stuff again, we've hired like YouTube advisors and stuff, and so that's how like I learned a lot of this stuff. But a
yeah,
lot of it is just trial and error and learning like on this side of things. And now what's really cool is like I'm essentially opening up the playbook to everybody, and
that's so
like
cool.
a part of me is like, oh, like is anybody gonna get mad at me for just literally sharing everything on the podcast success side? Like, but at the same time, like I'm stoked because I want everybody to feel this. Like I wake
Yeah,
up with meaning now, right? I remember I would wake up and just like, I gotta do the thing again. Now it's like, yo, we're gonna go podcast today, or like I'm gonna be on the macro perspective. Like, I can't
yeah.
believe how amazing this life is. And again, like a lot of like stuff that I see on YouTube is like, oh, you need, this expensive camera, you need this expensive microphone, you need this, you need that. Like, I'm not sure what you're recording on right now, but you have like some earbuds in. Does it
This
seem like
is
it's
yeah, it's not that big of a setup. It's a bit more at Marcos's house than my house because we kind of co
yeah,
deal.
yeah,
He's in Vegas, but I had to be mobile today, so it was like the mobile setup.
dude, but that's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't take much. Like this
Yeah,
microphone right here is $70 and it sounds like I I need to like finish this test, but like I've recorded on this microphone and the $400 Shure SM7B.
yeah,
I've put them next to each other and
yeah.
I can't tell the difference. So it's like, wait a second, like what the heck?
I
And then
think
when
the
it comes,
point there though is like, I mean, sorry to cut you off, but like
no,
the
no, you're
point
good,
there
you're good.
is like, is it's so easier now to do what you're like you said you want to do because the technology is it's not like when you think of podcasts before podcasts is it's like radio host shows and like you had to be a radio host to like do a podcast or something or Sirius XM and it's like from the Tim Ferrisses to the Andrew Hubermans to any comedian out there it's like the setup obviously their production value is great but before that it like I think anyone could just make it happen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And again, like it doesn't take a lot of money to make it sound and look really, really good. Like yes, you could use your iPhone, but like in this thing that I'm going to be offering to people, like I show you a way of like how to set it up to where you can connect it to Riverside or something
Mhm.
to where it's not like, oh, I got this gigantic file in my iPhone. What do I do with it? Like it's a
Yeah,
pain to get that big file off an iPhone. So it's like, no, let's just use Riverside because that's way easier. But
so
yeah, so what I'm trying to do is like bring the barrier of entry down to like almost nothing, but
yeah.
also like teach and show like, wait, like, no, but you can actually look and sound as professional as everybody else and it's not going to break the bank. And, like everybody, when you start to put something together, it's like, okay, but like, if this then that, okay, but then if this then that, but then if that then this, and then like I kept tabbing over when I'm trying to create this thing. So it is pretty complex. I do get in depth, but my goal was to make it to where like if you're not podcasting right now, this is the thing that's going to help you launch your podcast within like 30 days. If you are
Boom.
already Yeah, if you are already podcasting, oh well, this is the thing that's going to potentially make it to where you're a full-time podcaster, right? To where you could quit that job, where you could say wife or spouse, girlfriend, whoever, hey, you can go ahead and quit because the podcast is covering everything, like we're good.
Oof. Oh man,
right?
that gives me chills because like, hey, I love my 9 to 5. I love what I do. So like, I love my work and I love the mission I'm here on my planet. But it'd also be nice to feel financially uh, given that opportunity as well, right? It's always a good feeling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would kind of like get like pushed away when I would hear people talk about like the financial side or their financial success. But man, I'm not rich by any standard, like, or whatever you want to call it. Like, like but the thing is, the room I'm in, the house that's attached to this room, I'm just in my garage, by the way. Um, Everything in that house, the electric bill, the heating bill, the water bill, I don't even know what the heck the other bills are. My wife takes care of that. I am the sole provider for a family of four, and all of
Wow,
that is taken care of because of podcasting. Right, a thing that my dad doesn't even understand how it works. He's like, well, "Who pays you?" And
exactly.
I'm like, "Don't worry about it. Just know that your son is doing well. Like, we're good." I hope that doesn't like push anybody, turn anybody off when I'm saying like yes, I'm the only provider. Like I told my wife, hey, you need to quit your job. Like you're done. Like you need to be there to help raise our son. Like instead of being, because she would work from home, and so she was making it work. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, he needs your attention all the time. And
Hmm.
my son was like one of the biggest reasons why like I got into jujitsu, if not the biggest reason why I got into jujitsu, which we can talk about some other time, but everything I do is for my kids and for my family. And
Yeah.
so being able to provide for them is incredible, but being able to do that while doing something I love is something that I want more people to experience.
No.
And man, the impact that a podcast can have, if you're listening right now and you have a story, like the world needs that story because you have
Hmm.
no idea who that's going to reach. And when I tell you that people in other countries know who I am and they know my story, I'm not joking because I receive those messages.
Yeah.
They would never hear those messages unless I was on a podcast. A silly little podcast that started growing and started doing its thing and introduced me to Seamus right now. It's just
Yeah.
like this stuff is really, really cool. And if you've ever considered it, then yes, I can help you pursue that, right? That's what the whole thing is called. It's called Pursue Podcasting because, yes, I think you should be, pursuing a podcast. And if you are confused on where to start, I can help you with that. And sorry if I can drop the website right now,
Please,
but
yeah,
it's
yeah. Please drop
yeah,
it, and
yeah, yeah.
just,
Pursue
just what is it? Go ahead, Andrew. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, pursuepodcasting.com/macro. So for being on the macro perspective and for you listening, and like, I'm just so grateful that you'd spend the time to hang out with us today. I have a free podcast equipment guide. So basically like, starting almost with almost any budget, from you can have a whole like studio setup for like under $300 if you wanted. And then of course you can have a bigger like setup like mine for a lot more, but you don't have to start there, right? You can start anywhere and then build from there. But again, that's at pursuepodcasting.com/macro. Just tell me where to send it and you'll get it for absolutely free. It's a really deep, complex guide on like what you need, why you need it, give you examples on like, suggestion A, B, and C and whatnot. But it's again, I meant for it to be like 1 or 2 pages and it ended up being like 12. So I spent a lot of time on it. I hope you like it. And, there's ways to contact me in there if you get tripped up on anything. And I would love to hear from you and let me know what you think about the guide itself.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, thank you so much. I mean, honestly, your story from start to finish, this is what irks me about our own podcast is we're only limited to like an hour, hour and a half, and we want to do more time, but we want to be respectful to everyone's time. And I know your guys' is a longer form podcast. We're more like digital right now. And one day, the goal, like you said, that goal, that powerful goal of like full-time podcasts or full-time educational folks. Um, and I love that you're paving the path for the people doing that because that right there from a person being fed up in a cubicle doing the thing that wasn't fulfilling their soul to now impacting so many more people and giving them just a bit of an opportunity, but they still got to do the work. They got to read that 12-page document. They got to go through the course. This can be your way to the next thing. Is it a guaranteed check week by week? Is it guaranteed benefits? Hell no. But here's the thing. The beautiful thing about that is you will start carving your own path. And I'll tell you right now, carving my own path with the podcast, my own online platform outside of my own 9 to 5, has been one of the most eye-opening things because you find so much growth. And you know what? You start realizing, and this is a jiu-jitsu analogy, is it's a self-reliance thing. I know you have your kid, but as soon as he gets into jiu-jitsu, if he already is, they're the only ones out there. No coach, no other athlete can save them. It's not a football pass and they blame it on this person or that person or the other team. It's only you. And you take that responsibility and you're able to put your will upon the world. And that's the beauty of all this. But Andrew, again, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. They've got the links. We'll put it into the show notes. Any last things you want to share with the folks? Any last quotes? Anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. Just again, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. And I've been told not to say this by my buddy Robert Sykes, but if you dig, kind of what we had going on here, I'm essentially like the guy behind the cameras and behind everything on our show, Mark Bell's Power Project. And so like again, okay, maybe I won't say it, but what I was gonna say is like I'm kind of like third string quarterback to Mark and Ensema, but I'm a co-host, and we have our main host Mark Bell, and then we have our main co-host Ensema Inyang, and those guys are just incredible wealths of knowledge. And so if you dug this, then there's a really good chance you're going to dig the Power Project, and so we would love to have you on there. We go lives. We do live Q&As on Thursdays, except not this Thursday because Ensema is, well, depending on when this comes out, Ensema's competing, so who knows when that'll come out. But just look for us on Thursdays. We do live Q&As, so you can actually become a part of the show, ask questions and that sort of thing. But yeah, no, that's it. And like again, my everything's going to be on pursuepodcasting.com. It's not even fully up and running. I don't even know if that thing's going to work when you go and click on the website right now, but everything I've done is like, hey, let's go do it right now, and we'll figure it out when we get there. This website's definitely that. And the other way to get in touch with me is at I am Andrew Z on Instagram. That's like the main thing. I have a TikTok, but I don't even download it on my phone. So
Yeah.
the main thing is Instagram. So hopefully I see you there. And yeah, let me know what you think about the guide.
Awesome. Well, you heard it, Macro Perspective peeps. Another episode. We'll get the show notes below and hope you guys enjoy that one. Comment below. Thank you, guys.